The action takes place in a large room which is designed for sacred rituals. The protagonist drinks a ritual potion given to her by the girls who serve in the temple. The protagonist doesn't want to drink the ritual potion, but she can't resist. The potion has immobilized the girl. In addition, she is forcibly held by the temple attendants. The bottle with the sacred potion fell on the stone floor of the ritual room. The main character's name is Radana. In front of her stands an angry girl with red hair. She is the daughter of the high priest of the El Diego Empire, whose name is Unicus Mundus. The girl with the red hair is called Grazia Mundus. She was supposed to die today, but Grazia Mundus will sacrifice the main character instead. Radana tries to say something, but she has lost the ability to speak. This is what the ritual potion did to the protagonist. Radana cannot control her body and voice. The protagonist can only cry and complain to the gods for treating her so cruelly. Grazia Mundus said that it is a great honor to die in her place in the name of a powerful deity. She hoped that Radana had time to enjoy the last few months of the luxurious life she had been graciously given. Grazia Mundus said that Radana should smile rather than cry. Today she would be able to meet the son of the great sun. Grazia ordered her maids to dye Radana's hair red. Grazia's Mundus assistants began to deftly dye the main character's hair red. Now Radana will be very hard to distinguish from Grazia Mundus when she enters the big arena. Grazia Mundus is very happy with the result. The main character's hair is now the same color as Grazia Mundus's. No one will notice the substitution of the ritual sacrifice. Grazia Mundus said goodbye to the protagonist and said that she enjoyed spending time with her. Grazia Mundus then left Radana, who is to be sacrificed in the large arena today. Radana cannot move of her own free will. The ritual potion is still working. Suddenly, the protagonist begins to be dragged by the temple attendants. It is not only painful, but also very humiliating. The protagonist doesn't know what to do. She can't control her voice and body. It's a terrible situation. Radana does not want to die today. Radana leans helplessly on the temple attendants who lead her into the large arena. The protagonist is crying and can think of nothing to relieve her condition. Finally, Radana is led to the large doors that lead to the large arena. The temple attendants open the doors, and a majestic sight opened before the protagonist. The large arena is of enormous size and holds a large number of spectators who are hungry for bread and spectacle. In addition, the best masters of the empire worked on the construction of the big arena. They created a real masterpiece of architecture. The grandstands of the big arena are filled with people who shout loudly and clap their hands. They are anticipating a bloody spectacle that will entertain them perfectly. On the balcony of the arena stands the high priest of the El Diego Empire, Unicus Mundus. He has said that today he will keep his promise and sacrifice his daughter to the son of the sun. The huge crowd of spectators, who were seated on the bleachers of the large arena, cheered frantically. The high priest of the empire enjoys the approving shouts of the commoners who are thirsty for the sacrificial blood. Tears appeared in the high priest's eyes. He is in a state of religious ecstasy. Unicus Mundus looked at Radana, who is covered by a transparent cloak. She is very hard to distinguish from the high priest's daughter. The protagonist looked at the high priest. The girl is confused and cannot understand why all this is happening to her and how she deserved such an unjust punishment. Will Unicus Mundus not show his mercy and sacrifice an innocent girl? Radana is tied to a ritual pole that is set on a pile of firewood. The protagonist wants to burn to please the divine son of the sun. The high priest holds a lighted torch in his hand and weeps because of the fact that he will have to sacrifice his daughter. The protagonist looks with horror and doom at the high priest who holds the torch in his hand. All he has to do is make one movement with his hand, and the sacred pyre will be lit. Then Radana will die in horrible agony. Radana tries to scream, but she fails because of the continuing effects of the ritual potion. The girl realizes that she is living out her last moments of life. The crowd does not realize that Radana is on the ritual pyre and not the high priest's daughter. The people have been subjected to an insidious deception, but the thirst for spectacle blinds their eyes. The protagonist took one last look at the sold-out crowd and tried to loosen the ropes that bound her. It was no use. Death was already near Radana. The high priest threw a torch into the pile of firewood on which the protagonist stands. The sacrificial pyre instantly began to blaze, burning Radana's bare feet. The merciless fire has already begun its work. The unfortunate girl tries to call for help and break free, but all her efforts are in vain. The insatiable flames have completely enveloped Radana's tender and young body. The action takes place in a sacred temple on the eastern edge of the empire. In this sacred place, the stone mountains meet the heavens. The faithful servant of the third son of the sun god, Orazio Lumen, named Gino, is very excited. The Sun Prince asks him to be quiet because he is distracting Orazio Lumen and preventing him from resting. Orazio Lumen is enjoying a fine wine, and he does not want to be distracted from this activity by Gino's silly antics. The faithful servant tells him that the Festival of the Sun is coming up. Orazio's father will punish Gino if the prince does not attend the festival. Orazio Lumen replied to the servant that he need not worry about the wrath of the sun god. The Sun Prince will kill Gino before his father does, if the servant does not stop his idle and foolish chatter. The Sun Prince said he would take his servant's life quickly and painlessly. Orazio Lumen jokes like that. Gino replied that he knows how to resurrect, but it is a very painful process. The faithful servant added that the prince needs to please his father. Otherwise, his anger might fall on Orazio Lumen's head. After these words, Gino decided that he had better keep quiet for a while. The Sun Prince doesn't pay any attention to his servant. He said that he was already finishing his fourth bottle of wine. Gino thought that the sun god would definitely punish him with his sizzling fire. Gino thought about the upcoming festival that should be held soon. This festival is held on the days of solar eclipses. The sun god, who is the ruler of the Povius Empire, has 3 sons. These young men have different characters and talents, but they are the sons of the god. Therefore, human sacrifices are offered to them by the inhabitants of the vassal state of El Diego. Each Sun Prince must receive 1 girl as a sacrifice. These unfortunate inhabitants of the vassal state are burned at the stake during the solar festival. In the Povius Empire, there is a prophecy that says one of the Sun Princes will meet a special girl. She will possess invulnerability to flames. Through this union, a great and powerful deity will be born that will change the entire order of things and usher in a new era of existence. Gino remembered all this information and thought that thanks to some silly legend, innocent girls who could still live a long time and delight others with their beauty were dying on the bonfires. What a terrible tradition. Every year, the princes of Povius must listen to the screams of the girls who are burned alive on the pyres. Orazio Lumen never asked to be sacrificed, much less human sacrifice. He just doesn't need it. Gino looked at the prince and said that the sun god would demand a personal meeting with Orazio Lumen if he refused to accept a new sacrifice again. After that, Gino's faithful servant would be thrown into the abyss. Does the Sun Prince really want his loyal servant dead? There's no need to upset the Divine Father. Otherwise, there will be a great price to pay. The prophecy must be fulfilled. It is the wish of the sun god. The Sun Prince rose from his bed and said that he would accept a new human sacrifice today if the sun god so desires. Orazio Lumen thought for a while and told his servant to tell the sun god his request. May this be the first and last sacrifice that would die because of him. Gino replied that he would surely fulfill the Sun Prince's order. The servant asked Orazio Lumen to take him with him when he went to fetch the soul of the new victim. The Sun Prince closed his eyes and concentrated to transport himself to the place where the new sacrifice was being offered. Orazio Lumen took his servant with him as he had requested. In the great arena of the state of El Diego, the sacrificial pyre in which the protagonist is to die is blazing. The Sun Prince and his servant are transported to this place to take the soul of the unfortunate Radana with them. The protagonist is embraced by a sacred fire. Red tongues of flame merge with the unfortunate girl's hair into one. A few more moments pass and Radana's torment will end forever, unless a miracle happens. The high priest of the empire, El Diego, bade Radana a loud farewell and called her Grazia to finally convince the crowd of onlookers that it was his daughter he had sent to the slaughter. Besides, the Sun Prince must know the name of the girl who was sacrificed to him today. Suddenly, the Sun Prince appeared over the great arena of the state of El Diego. The crowd of spectators gasped loudly when they saw Orazio Lumen floating in the sky above the sacrificial flames. The onlookers began to eulogize the Sun Prince and ask him to accept tonight's sacrifice. Orazio Lumen looks at the girl who is completely engulfed by the sacred fire. He feels very sorry for the girl's terrible torment at the stake. The Sun Prince cannot look at this hellish picture. Horatio Lumen thought he should have come for the girl's soul after she was burned. He's afraid to hear the dying victim's piteous screams. Gino told the Sun Prince that it was time for him to end this cruel ceremony. Horatio Lumen descended from heaven to earth and walked toward the sacrificial pyre through the blazing flames. The Sun Prince approached the unfortunate girl and called her Grazia. Orazio Lumen said that the girl had the divine gift of invulnerability from fire if she was still alive despite such hot flames. The protagonist looks at the Sun Prince with hatred. The girl felt that the effect of the ritual potion has already stopped. Now Radana will take out all her rage on this miserable deity, even if only verbally. Radana regained the power of speech. The girl said she was not Grazia. The first words were said quietly, because the protagonist could not calculate her strength correctly. Sunny Prince did not hear what the protagonist said. Orazio Lumen interrogated the girl about what she said. The son of the sun god wants to understand what this poor girl who was sacrificed to him today wants. The protagonist's second attempt was more successful. The girl said loudly and clearly that her name was not Grazia and called the Sun Prince a cruel and heartless creature who kills innocent girls with impunity. The action takes place in the heavenly palace of the Sun Prince. Orazio Lumen accepted the sacrifice and took the protagonist to his palace. The faithful servant Gino does not approve of this. He rushes around the room and complains at the Sun Prince for his rash act. Orazio Lumen calmly listens to the nervous speeches of his faithful servant and enjoys the taste of juicy grapes. The Sun Prince has done what he wants to do, and that was good enough for him. He was required to accept a sacrifice, and he accepted it today. The Sun Prince told his faithful servant to take care of the girl and make sure she would definitely survive being burned on the sacrificial pyre. Orazio Lumen later wants to check something out. The Sun Prince's servant is displeased again. Gino doesn't understand why he should waste divine energy on a pathetic and worthless person. Let that person be a girl. It doesn't make any difference. Gino added that the Sun Prince went against his father's will. This is a very dangerous venture. There could be a trial for it, followed by an imminent severe punishment from the sun god. Orazio Lumen is not at all moved by the words of his faithful servant. He is amused by the hysteria of the sensitive Gino. Horatio Lumen replies to the servant that no one in the world has the right to judge him. The Sun Prince is the sole arbiter of justice in the celestial palace. Not even his father, Sol Lumen, who is the sun god, can judge Orazio. The Sun Prince's loyal servant was a bit startled when he heard these words from his master. Gino decided that it was better not to argue with Orazio Lumen right now. The servant approached the protagonist, who was lying unconscious on the bed. The girl received many burns on the sacrificial pyre. She is in a very dangerous condition. Gino begins to treat the girl's many burns with celestial magic. The Sun Prince's servant scrutinizes Radana's wounds and realizes that she is in a borderline condition. The Sun Prince took the girl from the fire just in time. Heavenly energy slowly but surely spreads through the girl's burned body, repairing the mangled tissues. In order to fully heal the protagonist, Gino will need some time and considerable effort. The Sun Prince's faithful servant has done a good job of restoring the protagonist. Radana is still lying unconscious on the bed, but her body has been renewed and her hair has regained its natural color of ripe wheat. After a while, Gino noticed that his patient's breathing had become more even and distinct. She was on the mend. The servant of the Sun Prince was a little tired from his labors. Gino wiped his sweaty forehead with his hand and said that it would take some more time for the girl to come to her senses. Gino made one last plea to his prince to get rid of this girl before her human odor spread throughout the heavenly palace. Mr. Orazio did not reply anything to the servant. The Sun Prince gazed intently at the renewed girl and admired her ethereal beauty. Orazio Lumen realized that he had done a good deed today. He has saved this poor and innocent girl from imminent death. Now the Sun Prince is responsible for her. Suddenly, Orazio Lumena's faithful servant informed his master that an ambassador from the imperial palace had arrived. He asks for an audience with the prince. Orazio Lumen thought that the messenger's visit was now very unfortunate. He really doesn't like to be distracted. The Sun Prince's faithful servant has started to panic again. He wants to hide the girl from unwanted witnesses as soon as possible. A few minutes later, an ambassador entered the chambers of the Sun Prince and said that he brought gifts to Orazio Lumen, gifts from the queen. The ruler was happy that Orazio had attended the Sun Festival for the first time today and accepted his first human sacrifice. The Sun Prince looked closely at the ambassador and the girls who accompany him as gifts. Orazio Lumen does not wish to be disturbed by anyone, therefore he decided to teach the ambassador and the one who sent him here a lesson. Suddenly, a magical force field activated under the ambassador's feet. The guest had not expected such treatment from Orazio Lumen. The Sun Prince used magic to teach the ambassador a lesson. The force magic field around the ambassador gradually becomes larger. The uninvited guest begins to feel the effects of the Sun Prince's magic. He experiences very unpleasant sensations. The ambassador is very frightened and turns to Orazio Lumen. The guest said that the Sun Prince cannot treat the ambassador so badly. He must follow the accepted rules and honor the traditions of the solar empire of Povius. Orazio Lumen looks at the frightened ambassador carefully. The Sun Prince said that today is a fine day to die. If that is what the intruder wants, Orazio Lumen can help him do it now. The ambassador realized that the Sun Prince was not joking with him. He said that he was very hot because of the power magic that Orazio Lumen used. After that, the ambassador chased away the girls who accompanied him as a gift to the Sun Prince. It was this gift that made Orazio Lumen angry. The girls hurried to get out of the Sun Prince's chambers as soon as possible. The uninvited guest is suffering terribly, shrouded in a scalding magical field. A few more moments, and the life will leave his body. So strong is the magical power of Orazio Lumen. The prince's loyal servant looks on in horror at what is happening. He thought that after this incident, the Pyros family and the queen would be very angry with Orazio Lumen for showing disrespect to the gifts given in honor of his initiation. The Sun Prince can read minds. Orazio Lumen realized what his loyal servant Gino was thinking and said that he was not afraid of the Empress or anyone else. The imperial family should not interfere unceremoniously in the affairs of the Sun Prince. He wants to be free and independent. Orazio Lumen thought for a while and decided to throw his servant out of the chambers. He is worrying too much and annoying the Sun Prince. Orazio snapped his fingers and Gino flew off the balcony into the sky. The Sun Prince loudly told his servant to talk less and worry more about the health of the girl they saved from being burned at the stake today. When the girl wakes up, Gino must immediately inform Orazio Lumen. Otherwise, he will be punished. Meanwhile, the protagonist lies on the bed and has a nightmarish dream. The girl is still not recovered and is recovering from the burns she received at the bonfire. Gino's treatment helps Radana, but it will take some time for her to finally come to her senses. The protagonist dreams that she was a beggar girl who was caught on the street and forcibly sent to the sacred tower. Radana begs not to treat her cruelly, but the wardens do not listen to her and continue to do their black deeds. Radana tries to escape from the warden's hands and run away, but the warden hit the girl and said that no one had ever run away from him, and Radana should not even try to escape. The protagonist fell to her knees and begged for mercy from the sun god, but he is deaf to her pleas. The warden takes Radana to the sacred tower and throws her at the feet of Grazia Mundus, the priestess of the sun god. The priestess asked the warden if he had caught any more, or if that was the entire catch for the day. The warden replied to the priestess that he had caught a few more beggarly young girls in the streets of the city, that she would be suitable for ritual burning. This girl now belongs to the Temple of the Sun as well. Radana continues to pray in vain to the sun god. The protagonist cries and begs to be let home. She does not realize what is happening. The girl is not guilty of anything and has not broken any laws. Radana prays to the sun god, but all this is absolutely useless. She has fallen into a real hell. Grazia Mundus hurried to comfort Radana. She said that the girl would be put in a private room where she would be safe. All she was required to do was to eat well and take care of her appearance so that she would be ready to serve the sun god. Some time has passed. The protagonist sits on the bed in her room and brushes her hair. Radana has learned that Grazia Mundus is soon to be sacrificed on a sacred pyre. The girl admires the sacrifice of the priestess of the sun god. The protagonist is very grateful to Grazia Mundus for picking her up on the street and saving her from a life of poverty. Radana now has a delicious meal and a warm room. She will serve in the Temple of the Sun. Grazia Mundus has magical powers. She can ignite the sacred flame at will, which she cherishes and protects. Radana dreams of becoming like the priestess of the sun god and learning magic. The protagonist has finished her morning toilette. Now the girl prays gracefully to the sun god and thanks him for the possibility of a peaceful and quiet life in his temple. She will do anything to please this deity. Suddenly, Grazia Mundus, the assistant of Grazia, entered the room of the protagonist. She said that Radana needed to be at the high priest's office right away. He is summoning her. But first, Radana needs to change the color of her hair. The protagonist doesn't understand what's going on. She is a little confused and frightened by the words of Grazia Mundus's assistant. Vague suspicions begin to creep into Radana's soul, but she tries to brush them aside. Radana, accompanied by several servants of the Temple of the Sun, went to the high priest after dyeing her hair. The protagonist was dressed in a ritual dress and also covered her face with a transparent veil. The protagonist looked at her reflection in the stained glass window of the Temple of the Sun and realized that she now looked a lot like Grazia Mundus. This pleased and slightly alarmed Radana. Radana thought she needed to temper her pride and vanity. She thinks too much of herself and her similarity to Grazia Mundus. It's too early for a girl to even dream of that. The protagonist is brought to the high priest Unicus Mundus. The high priest of the sun god was told that his daughter Grazia Mundus stood before him. Radana could not believe her ears when she heard this. The high priest looks at the protagonist carefully. He asked the girl if it was true that she was Grazia Mundus. The priest inquired what brought his daughter to him at this time. Radana replied that she did not understand why she was called Grazia Mundus. The girl apologized to the high priest for disturbing him and making him uncomfortable. Suddenly, the high priest's real daughter appeared in the hall. She made her father aware of herself and said hello to him. The protagonist saw Grazia Mundus and fell on her knees before her. The girl loves and respects the high priest's daughter very much, who saved her and gave her a new life. The high priest finally recognizes his real daughter. He is a little confused. Grazia Mundus laughed merrily. She asked the high priest if he liked her daughter's joke. She had been looking for a suitable double for a very long time to fool the spectators during the ritual sacrificial burning in the main arena of the state of Eladego. Grazia Mundus approached the protagonist and grabbed her hand. She showed the high priest the sign that was depicted on Radana's hand. Grazia told her father that it was the mark of the Mundus family. Radana is the high priest's illegitimate daughter, whom he abandoned at birth. This means that Grazia Mundus and Radana are sisters. The high priest's daughter said that she was very lucky to find her half-sister. This would help deceive the people into believing that Grazia Mundus had been burned on the sacrificial pyre. The high priest looked at Radana carefully and remembered her when she was a little girl. Unicus Mundus also remembered the mother of the protagonist. He thought that they should have been destroyed long ago, but now the high priest's illegitimate daughter might be of use to him. Unicus Mundus told Grazia that his association with Radana's mother was a mistake. She should know that and always remember it. Grazia Mundus listened to her father and asked the protagonist what she thought about it. Radana should be proud that she is very much like her sister. It should be a great honor for her. Radana doesn't know what to answer her sister. The unfortunate girl is trembling with fear. Grazia Mundus said that Radana's mother was a priestess of the Temple of the Sun, and her gorgeous yellow hair drove many men crazy. Grazia Mundus looked scornfully at her sister and said that tomorrow, Radana would take her place on the sacrificial pyre during the festival celebrations in the name of the Sun Prince. Radana listened to Grazia Mundus and realized that tomorrow she would die in hellish agony on the sacrificial pyre. The protagonist cried again and began begging to be spared. She would do anything to avoid such an agonizing death, but Grazia Mundus only smiled back and said that Radana was born to die in her place. The protagonist is still asleep and has her nightmare dream in which she relives the recent events of her life. The girl moans and cries in her sleep from terrible mental and physical pain. Next to the bed on which Radana lies sits Orazio Lumen. He is watching his ward closely. The protagonist is in delirium. Suddenly, the girl grabbed the Sunny Prince by his cape. This surprised Orazio Lumen. The Sun Prince took his ward by the hand. He felt sorry for this poor girl who almost died today because of human stupidity and belief in primitive prejudices. Horatio Lumen lifted the sleeping girl to get a better look at her. The Sun Prince thought that she was only a human, but her beautiful yellow hair reminded the Sun Prince of liquid gold. The unfortunate girl had not yet regained consciousness. Large tears are rolling down Radana's cheeks. She is still captive to her nightmare dream. Orazio Lumen once again took the protagonist by the hand. The Sun Prince felt that Radana's hand is very hot. The girl's body temperature rose. Suddenly, Radana opened her eyes. He began to come to his senses after the touch of the Sun Prince. The protagonist tries to consider Orazio Lumen, but she is not good at it. Radana takes some time to come to her senses and get a good look at everything. The protagonist asks the Sun Prince who he is and where she is. Orazio Lumen is silent. He is afraid of scaring his ward. Maybe the girl just won't believe him when he tells her that she is in the heavenly abode of the Sun Prince. Orazio Lumen decided to boost his ward's strength a bit with the wine he was drinking. The Sun Prince used magic to take the wine glass and get the girl drunk with it. Radana sipped some of the divine wine from the Sun Prince's glass. This drink should give the protagonist strength so that she would recover and come to her senses faster. With each drop of divine wine that dissolved in the blood of the protagonist, she has more strength. The girl began to feel it instantly. The protagonist's eyes brightened up. The abundant tears dried on her cheeks. The girl gradually returned to her normal state. Her soul began to regain its vitality. Suddenly, Radana remembered how she had been force drunk with ritual drink in the Temple of the Sun. The girl became very afraid again. Could it be that she was going to be sacrificed and burned at the stake again? The protagonist pressed her lips tightly together. She would no longer give in to the provocation, nor would she drink any ritual drinks. It ended very badly for her last time. The protagonist's body began to obey her, and she felt it immediately. Radana swung her hand and threw away the wine glass that the Sun Prince brought to her lips. Orazio Lumen had told the protagonist that she needed to drink wine now. Otherwise, the sunlight would burn her, and she wouldn't be able to survive. Radana screamed that she would not drink anything else. Orazio Lumen insists that she will not. The Sun Prince took his glass of divine wine again to get the protagonist drunk. The young man brought the wine glass to his ward's mouth. He said that the girl should not be afraid of anything. She will be helped by this drink. The strength will return to Radana soon. But to do this, you need to drink from the glass. The protagonist does not stop her resistance. It only intensified. The girl again knocked the wine glass out of the hand of the Sun Prince. Radana cried again. The unhappy girl asked the Sun Prince not to force her to drink wine from the glass. It would traumatize her even more. Orazio Lumen replied to his ward that at first her stubbornness seemed cute to him and amused him. But now the girl's behavior was beginning to irritate the Sunny Prince. There was no need to test the limits of Orazio Lumen's patience. Otherwise, it could be fraught with bad consequences. The Sun Prince took his glass and filled his mouth with some divine wine. He did this to show the girl the safety of his intentions and to apply a new method by which Radana would not be able to refuse the life-giving drink. After that, Orazio Lumen leaned over to his ward to give her the divine wine with the help of his own mouth. The protagonist at first did not understand what the young man wanted to do, but now it is too late to resist. Orazio Lumen poured the divine wine into Radana's mouth, and she drank it. The lips of the Sun Prince and the protagonist parted. A pleasant shiver ran through Radana's body. The girl felt the invigorating power of the divine wine and a slight dizziness from the kiss of the beautiful young man. Now the protagonist could get a good look at Orazio Lumen. The appearance and face of the Sunny Prince liked Radana very much. The girl looked at Orazio Lumen carefully and asked him again who he was. Radana wants to understand who her savior is. The Sun Prince replied to the protagonist that he is very disappointed. The girl should realize who she is visiting. Radana was surprised by the young man's words. Orazio Lumen smiled meaningfully and looked the protagonist in the eyes. He decided to give the girl a hint so she would realize who she was talking to. The Sun Prince said that he was the heartless and cruel creature that the protagonist had mentioned with hatred while burning on the ritual pyre. Radana listened to Orazio Lumen and began to realize that she was a guest of the Sun Prince. She had survived being burned at the stake. It's just some kind of miracle. The protagonist finally fully realized that she was in the heavenly abode of the gods. In front of Radana stands the real son of the sun god. This threw the girl into shock. Orazio Lumen smiled in response to the reaction of the protagonist. Finally, this girl will behave appropriately. The protagonist thought of the sun god. The girl was very afraid of his wrath for her disrespectful behavior. Radana has always been brought up in love and worship of the sun god. She is very devout and religious. Radana thought that she needed to urgently pray and ask the sun god for forgiveness. Otherwise, he will burn her with his fiery rays. All of the main character's relatives will suffer for many more years afterward if she does not atone for her guilt to the sun god. Radana watches the sun prince carefully. The girl fears his wrath. Will this divine young man not take pity on her and destroy her in the blink of an eye? The protagonist fell to her knees in terror and began to pray to the sun god. The girl asked for forgiveness for all her transgressions. She does not want to die and is ready to do anything to please her deity. Radana cries and prays. The unhappy girl asks the sun god to take pity on her and spare her from eternal torment in hell. The protagonist promises that she will sin no more and will devote her life to atoning for her sins. Orazio Lumen watches the protagonist carefully. The sunny prince appreciates Radana's religiosity and piety, but the divine young man was tired of listening to the endless prayers of the girl. He took his ward by the shoulders and set her on her feet beside him. The sun prince told Radana that the prayers and tears were enough for today. The girl needed to recover from her experiences and gather her thoughts. Life goes on. Orazio Lumen took his ward in his arms and laid her on the bed. The girl needs rest and sound sleep. After a while, her strength and health will be fully restored, and everything will be fine. The main heroine no longer resists the sunny prince. The girl realized that this divine young man does not want to do her any harm. So far, she saw from him only care and help. Orazio Lumen put Radana on the bed, and she immediately fell asleep. The girl still has too little strength. The sun prince can't believe his eyes. He sees such a thing for the first time in his life. Sunny prince looks at the sleeping girl carefully. The young man notices that she is very beautiful, but tears are still rolling down Radana's cheeks. She is having nightmarish dreams again, which do not give her peace. Orazio Lumen thinks about this mortal girl, who today almost died on the sacrificial pyre and miraculously escaped death. The sun prince can't understand why he cares so much about the fate of this unfortunate girl. This has never happened to him before. Orazio Lumen thought about gods and humans. They are at different levels of development. The children of the sun god have a duty to watch over humans to make sure they worship their deity and don't deviate from the true faith. Otherwise, the universal balance of power will be disturbed. Gods take care of people's needs and help them in times of need. If people do not pay tribute to the gods, they will be punished immediately. Human life means almost nothing to the sun god. To Orazio Lumen, an ordinary mortal girl cannot be important by definition. But something was different this time. Radana dared to look into the eyes of the sun prince, and she did not look away. That pleased Orazio Lumen very much. But that wasn't all. For the first time in his life, Orazio Lumen could not read the mind of a living being. The sun prince brought his hand to Radana's forehead, but it had no effect. He cannot read the girl's mind. Orazio Lumen was very puzzled by this. Orazio Lumen looked at his ward, smiled enigmatically, and said that it would be a pity to kill this girl now. She aroused the sun prince's genuine interest. Orazio Lumen left his ward on the bed and decided to go about his business while the girl rested. The sunny prince called the maid to give her instructions. Orazio Lumen's maid entered his chambers, and the sun prince ordered her to keep a close eye on the girl sleeping on his bed. She needs care and nurturing. Therefore, the maid would have to be patient and diligent. The maid bowed and said that she would fulfill the sun prince's order exactly. Orazio Lumen looked approvingly at the obliging girl. The sun prince turned away from the maid to admire the golden skies that surrounded his abode. Orazio Lumen thought for a moment and told his maid to show proper respect to his ward. The sun prince needs this girl. The sunny morning of the next day came. The celestial palace of Tesca, where Orazio Lumen lives, sparkles with the bright glare of the sun. Orazio Lumen's faithful servant came to his master's chambers and found a mortal girl sleeping in them. Gino is very worried because the unfortunate girl is still alive and in the chambers of the sun prince. No one must find out about this. Orazio Lumen is already awake. The sun prince sits next to the sleeping girl and strokes his room panther. The animal is very pleased with his master's caresses. The sun prince tells his faithful servant Gino to be quiet and not to wake the sleeping girl. Orazio Lumen decided that the mortal girl would stay in his chambers for the time being. Orazio Lumen strokes his pet panther affectionately. Gino's faithful servant is again worried that someone will smell the mortal girl in the Sun Prince's chambers and report it to the sun god. Gino asks Horatio Lumen if he wants to get close to the girl he is harboring in his chambers. The Sun Prince answered in the affirmative. The faithful servant of the divine young man froze with surprise. He was speechless for a while. A second panther approached the Sun Prince to be petted by Orazio Lumen as well. The divine young man looked at his faithful servant and laughed. He said that Gino need not worry. The Sun Prince was just joking. The faithful servant exhaled in relief. He asked his master when he would get rid of the mortal girl. Maybe the Sun Prince wants to keep the girl as a pet. Gino pointed to the sleeping girl. He said that the Sun Prince can't keep her alive. Otherwise, he will have a big problem with the sun god and especially his wife because of this. Orazio Lumen's reputation would suffer. Orazio Lumen listened carefully to his loyal servant and smiled enigmatically. After a few moments, the Sun Prince said that Gino was right in his judgment. The loyal servant of the sun god's son once again believed in his master's cold mind. Gino again exhaled in relief and said that it was urgent to get rid of the unwanted guest before anyone noticed her. The Sun Prince looked at his faithful servant and hastened to disappoint him. Orazio Lumen said he wanted to take this girl as his bride as soon as possible. Gino covered his ears with his hands. The faithful servant said he would pretend as if he had not heard his master's last words. These are just horrible words that Gino refuses to believe. Horatio Lumen said he was amazed at Gino's audacity. Maybe he should be treated like the other servants who failed to please the Sun Prince and were punished. Gino started to get nervous after his master's words. The faithful servant replied to the Sun Prince that he was unfair to him and wanted to do very cruel things to him. Horatio Lumen replied to the servant that he should learn to keep his mouth shut. If Gino learns to keep secrets and secrets, no one will know about the presence of the mortal girl, and one must not forget about the prophecy, in case it turns out to be true. Gino listened to his master and asked him how long he would keep the girl hidden in his house. In addition, the faithful servant noticed that Orazio Lumen does not resemble his brothers, not only in appearance, but also in character. The servant thought that Orazio Lumen's black eyes and hair were evidence that his mother was a mortal woman. The Povius Empire had always been suspicious of mestizos, even if they were born of the sun god. Often such children were killed by rivals or envious people. Therefore, the inferior children of the sun god had to fight for their survival. This is the reason for the cynical and cruel character of Orazio Lumen. Despite all the dangers and difficulties that haunted Orazio Lumen all his conscious life, he survived and became a Sun Prince. In addition, the divine young man inherited the name and glory of his powerful father. Orazio Lumen gained the ability to read other people's minds. Therefore, no one dares to challenge him. Orazio Lumen told his servant that everyone in his family was eagerly waiting for him to choose a worthy girl. That moment has come. The Sun Prince wants to become a real man with the help of the mortal girl who was sacrificed to him. The Sun Prince's loyal servant replies that his family wants Orazio Lumen to take a goddess, not a mortal girl, as his bride. Otherwise, the divine young man could lose everything and even his title. Orazio Lumen listened to his servant and looked at him indifferently. The divine youth stroked his panther and thought. He didn't care about all his titles. Life in the heavens was too boring for a Sun Prince. Gino was horrified by Horatio Lumen's words. There are certain rules in the Povius Empire. To become a full-fledged heir to the throne, a prince must marry a supreme nymph or a very noble girl. The list of such girls who will be able to control Orazio Lumen was made by the Empress, which is his stepmother. The Empress is interested in her sons ascending the throne, and Orazio Lumen is left out. The Sun Prince has decided to tie his life to a mortal girl. If this happens, Orazio Lumen will lose his right to his father's throne forever. This cannot be allowed to happen under any circumstances. That's what the divine young man's faithful servant Gino thinks. Unexpectedly, Gino thought of the fact that his master is the only heavenly judge. Even Emperor Saul Lumen can't take away the title of prince from his disobedient son. This changes the matter completely. But the faithful servant is still overcome by doubts. He believes that divine beings should not get close to mortal men. It almost always leads to unhappiness or great change. Orazio Lumen looked up doomed and tiredly after his servant's words and said that he would do anything to get everyone off his back and let him live a completely free life. Gino looked regretfully at his master and said that he was in a very dangerous situation. Orazio Lumen might be expelled from heaven. This would definitely be taken advantage of by his enemies. The Sun Prince thought for a moment and told his servant that this was exactly what he wished for more than anything else in the world. Then Orazio Lumen poured divine wine into a glass to give it to the sleeping girl. Orazio Lumen brought the glass of divine wine to the sleeping girl's mouth and poured a few drops of the life-giving drink into her mouth. The Sunny Prince smiles enigmatically and waits for the medicine to show its effect. The protagonist drank the divine wine and woke up. The girl thought that the sun god took pity on her and sent her to heaven. Radana felt a pleasant warmth spreading through her body. The protagonist looked at her hands and realized that they were bound. This time the Sun Prince proved to be much more considerate. Orazio Lumen is afraid that the girl might do something rash again. The Sun Prince sits on the bed next to the protagonist. Orazio Lumen asked the girl what her name was if she was not Grazia Mundus. The protagonist replied that her name was Radana. The divine youth looked at his ward carefully and repeated her name. The Sun Prince liked it, and so did the girl. The protagonist tries to understand what the Sunny Prince wants from her. The unhappy girl feels much better now, but she is still very weak. It is difficult for her to get out of bed. The Sunny Prince says that the girl can call him just Orazio. This surprised the protagonist, because divine creatures cannot be addressed so simply and without ceremony. Radana asked Orazio Lumen not to kill her and untie her hands. She would not lash out again. The girl promised to behave herself. Now she realized where she was. Any resistance was useless on her part and could only make things worse. Orazio Lumen listened to his ward and with a snap of his fingers released her from the ropes that bound the girl's hands. The Sun Prince asked the protagonist not to faint anymore and not to do anything stupid. Radana gathered all her strength and got up from the bed to fall on her knees again and start praying to the Divine Prince. But Orazio Lumen stopped the protagonist and said there was no need to do that. The prayers would have to wait. It was better to channel her energies into more useful endeavors. The Sun Prince gently took the frightened girl by the chin and told her to raise her head and look Orazio Lumen in the eyes. Only Radana is capable of that, and it pleases the divine young man very much. Radana complied with Orazio Lumen's request and boldly looked into his eyes without averting her honest gaze. The Sun Prince appreciated the sincerity and obedience of this mortal girl, who had such extraordinary qualities to match the supreme nymph. The Sun Prince praised his ward. He said that during the conversation, one should maintain eye contact with his interlocutor. This will help to conduct the conversation openly and casually. The protagonist carefully looked at the face of the Sunny Prince and realized that this divine young man was very handsome. Radana's heart beat harder under Orazio Lumen's strong-willed gaze. The Sun Prince thought for a while and decided to calm his ward down a bit. The divine young man said he would let the girl live and would not punish her for her bad behavior. She was sick, and it was forgivable even for ordinary mortal humans. Orazio Lumen added that he could make Radana immortal. But to do so, the girl would have to spend the night in the bed of the divine young man. These are the conditions for gaining immortality. The main heroine did not expect such a turn of events. Just now, the girl thought that she wanted to kill her, and now she is offered a night of love by the Sun Prince. Radana almost fainted again. Too many emotional experiences she had to experience lately. The protagonist is reflective. Orazio Lumen is silent and waits for the girl's answer. Finally, Radana asks the Sun Prince what will happen if she doesn't want any immortality. She just wants to pray to the sun god and for everything to be as it was before. Orazio Lumen smiled at his ward and said that she is a very brave girl if she dares to refuse a divine gift. Things never go back to the way they were before. Everything flows and everything changes. The same thing happens to life in heaven, the sun. Prince took a close look at the protagonist and decided to leave her alone for now. Radana is still too weak to make any major decisions. She needs to rest and think things over carefully. The Sun Prince smiled at the protagonist and began to dissolve into a bright glow. A few moments later, Orazio Lumen disappeared from his chambers. Radana was left alone on her bed. Now the protagonist had something to think about. Orazio Lumen had offered her a night of love in exchange for immortality. But maybe this Sunny Prince is deceiving a poor and weak girl. Anything could be. Suddenly, her inner voice spoke to the protagonist. The girl asked herself if all men are the same. After all men behave like wild animals. It costs them nothing to deceive a weak and defenseless girl. Your innocence must be protected at all costs. Even the Sunny Prince can turn out to be a deceiver because he is a man. After everything that happened to Radana, she doesn't trust anyone else. Horatio Lumen's words are sweet as honey. But in this sticky honey, you can get stuck forever and never get out of it. The protagonist thought the Sunny Prince might turn her to stone or worse if she didn't please him. Anything could happen. The gods have no control over anyone, much less a mortal girl who found herself in an unenviable situation. Radana realized that she was backed into a blind corner from which it would be very difficult to get out. The girl cried and remembered her mother. She wants to ask her for advice in this situation, but unfortunately, the mother of the protagonist is not near her. She died a long time ago. Radana's salty tears drip on the floor. The drops revive the painted flowers on the floor of the heavenly abode of the Sunny Prince. Suddenly, the protagonist smells the distinct odor of real flowers. The girl is very surprised. Where can there be flowers in heaven? The tears of the protagonist soaked into the floor of the heavenly castle, and after a few moments, it provoked the appearance of a new character. Suddenly, a mysterious girl with green-colored hair and long, elf-like ears appeared before Radana. The protagonist saw the uninvited guest and was very frightened. Maybe the Sun Prince changed his mind and sent this girl with green hair to kill the unfortunate Radana. The girl with green hair saw that Radana was very scared of her and hurried to calm down the Sun Prince's ward. She made a soothing gesture with both hands, showing that she had no evil intentions towards Radana. But the protagonist had been through too much in these couple of days. Therefore, her nervous system is very shaken up right now. The girl is not used to the magical appearance of uninvited guests. From Teska's heavenly castle, a piteous scream of horror was heard. It was Radana's scream. The girl who suddenly appeared in front of the protagonist is named Nico. She is an inferior water nymph. This celestial being appeared before Radana due to her tears. The water nymph, Nico, apologized for appearing so suddenly in front of the Sun Prince's ward and scaring her. She rushed to calm the protagonist and said that she had brought her water and food. Radana calmed down a little, but she was possessed by apathy. The girl does not want to eat or drink anything, but this must not be done. In the heavenly palace of Teska, mortal men must constantly replenish their strength. Otherwise, they will be dried up by the light of the sacred sun. If proper measures are not taken immediately, Radana may die of exhaustion. The sacred rays of the divine sun never fade and act destructively on people. The protagonist urgently needs something to eat and drink. The water nymph Nico tries to convince Radana to bolster her strength, which she will still need. The Sun Prince has big plans for the mortal girl, but the protagonist is depressed and refuses everything that her new acquaintance offers her. Radana thought for a while and took a glass with a divine drink. This glass contains water that contains the energy of Orazio Lumen. It will strengthen the main character's strength. The water nymph Nico looks at Radana, who is holding a glass with a divine drink. The nymph does not understand why the mortal girl delays drinking this blessed liquid. One glass of this drink is very expensive and would provide several of Nico's sisters with a dowry if they were to marry. Radana is overcome by doubts. She fears that she is being poisoned. The protagonist asked the water nymph what would happen if she drank the drink. Nico replied that Radana would become healthy and beautiful like a heavenly goddess. The protagonist offered the water nymph to drink the divine drink that is in her glass, but the nymph Nico immediately refused. She has no right to even claim this divine gift from the Sunny Prince. Radana listened to her new acquaintance and denied all doubts. The girl drank the entire contents of her glass in a gulp. Nymph Nico heaved a sigh of relief. Her mission was accomplished. Now Radana would have her strength and her beauty would return. The water nymph Nico looked at Radana and asked her if she would eat, but the girl refused to eat. Then Nico told the protagonist that she should at least drink the divine drink so that she would not die. Radana agreed with the nymph. Nico thanked the Sun Prince's ward for her cooperation and understanding. After that, the nymph said that she wanted to do something else useful for Radana. Nymph Nico wove beautiful flowers into the hair of the protagonist, which look great and are intoxicatingly fragrant. The water nymph did the job very quickly, which surprised Radana. The protagonist became even more beautiful with flowers in her hair. Nymph Nico praised the girl and said that now she was ready to share a bed with the sunny prince. Radana was very puzzled by the water nymph's words. Nymph Nico said that in heaven, all girls weave flowers in their hair when they are preparing for their first wedding night with their lover. It's a beautiful tradition. The protagonist listens carefully to the water nymph and can't believe her ears. The girl sips a little of the divine drink from her glass to come to her senses. She does not know what to say to the nymph. The action takes place in the throne room of Orazio Lumen. The stone floor of the throne room is covered in blood. Something terrible has happened here. The hurried servants are trying to wipe up the blood on the stone floor of the throne room of the Sun Prince. Otherwise, they too will be punished. All the bloody evidence is gathered in a bag. Servants drag this horrible burden across the stone floor, leaving new red marks. Today, Orazio Lumen punished those who disobeyed him and did not grant his wishes properly. It turns out that the Sun Prince is very cruel and quick to retaliate. The servants continue to wipe the blood on the stone floor of the throne room and remove the bodies of the dead who dared to disobey Orazio Lumen and were severely punished by the Sun Prince. Orazio Lumen sits on his throne. He looks at the servants at work and absent-mindedly thinks about his problems. The rebellious prince has accumulated too many enemies. The divine young man wants to leave everything and start a new life, but not in heaven anymore. The lowly water nymph Nico stands in front of the sad Sun Prince. She looks at the bloody floor and columns of the throne room. The nymph guesses what just happened here. Nico reported to the Sun Prince that Radana tasted the divine drink today. She doesn't want to eat yet, but that will soon change. Orazio Lumen's fiancé is slowly gaining strength. Orazio Lumen is not in the best of moods right now. The Sun Prince listened to the water nymph and ordered her to leave immediately. Suddenly, Gino, a faithful servant of the divine youth, appeared in the throne room. The Sun Prince thought of Radana. This mortal girl he saved has been eating nothing for days and drinking only divine drink. That's dangerous. If it wasn't for Gino's servant and his knowledge of medicine, Radana wouldn't be alive anymore. Gino appeared in the throne room and immediately realized that the Sun Prince was in a very bad mood right now. This becomes clear from just looking at the bloody throne room. Gino hid behind a column of the hall. Orazio Lumen sensed the presence of his loyal servant. The Sun Prince ordered Gino to show himself to him immediately. Otherwise, he would be angry and the servant would be in trouble. Gino swiftly jumped out from behind the pillar he was hiding behind. The servant hurriedly calmed Orazio Lumen and said that he was just passing by and decided to look into the throne room for a moment. Orazio Lumen looked at his faithful servant carefully. He asked Gino why he was passing by the throne room just when the Sun Prince was punishing those who deserved it. Gino answered his master that he had good intuition. That was why he happened to be in the throne room at that moment. The servant thought for a while and asked Orazio Lumen if he would let Radana live, or if he would massacre her as well. Orazio Lumen sighed and looked away. He had had enough of his faithful servant's exhortations. Gino was too eager to get rid of the mortal girl without causing a scandal. The Sun Prince's faithful servant said that Orazio Lumen should not share his divine drink, which is made of gold, with an ordinary mortal girl. It is very expensive and scarce. Therefore, Orazio Lumen should think thrice before engaging in such irresponsible wastefulness. The Sun Prince listened to his servant. He poured himself a glass of golden divine drink and drank a little of it. After a few moments, Orazio Lumen turned his angry gaze on the servant who was boring him with his persistent persuasion. Now, the Sun Prince would teach Gino a lesson and show him how to behave. A blue flame appeared around Gino and began to burn and suffocate him. The Sun Prince's servant realized in horror that he might die now. Gino fell to his knees. He was in great pain because of the Sun Prince's sorcery. Gino asked Orazio Lumen not to kill him and show mercy. Gino covered his eyes with his hands and asked the Sun Prince if he really wants to kill him. It's not fair. Gino has served Orazio Lumen faithfully. He doesn't want to leave this world this way. The Sun Prince listens to his servant's pleas. He drank some more of the divine drink and tempered his anger. Gino will live today. The servant received an edifying lesson that he will remember forever. Orazio Lumen told the faithful servant that he was won over by Radana's brave gaze. Only she could look him straight in the eye and not avert her gaze. Gino said it would be best to get rid of this mortal girl before she caused the Sun Prince much trouble. If she was discovered in Orazio Lumen's chambers, the Empress would declare a real war on the prince. Gino hesitated and said that no one can look the Sun Prince in the eye. It is simply impossible. Whoever dares to do so will immediately die in horrible agony and lose his immortal soul, giving it to the Sun Prince to possess. Orazio Lumen replied to his servant that this was the very reason why he wanted to keep Radana alive. Only she could look him in the eye and not suffer the torments of hell while doing so. Suddenly, the Sun Prince let go of his glass with the divine drink and began to disappear. Some kind of force is overpowering Orazio Lumen. The faithful servant Gino did not expect such a turn of events. His master disappeared in an unknown direction. Surprised and confused, the servant was left alone in the bloody throne room of his rebellious master. The action takes place in the chambers of Orazio Lumen. The protagonist stands on the balcony and thinks about what has happened to her over the past few days. The girl looks very beautiful in a white outfit. The flowers woven into her hair really suit her. Radana asks herself why she asked Orazio Lumen to spare her. She could have died in peace and not suffered any humiliation or inconvenience. It would at least have been dignified. Radana does not like the scent of the flowers that are woven into her hair. The protagonist is overcome with ennui and boredom. The water nymph Nico has gone somewhere, and the other servants do not pay any attention to Radana. This saddens the girl. Radana stands on the edge of the balcony. The girl wants to test her fate again. She realizes that she can jump into the endless heavenly abyss and get her long-awaited freedom. Let death await her. It's better than doing what her heart won't allow. Radana is not ready to be the bride of Orazio Lumen. The main character stands on the edge of a bottomless abyss and cries. The girl is very scared, but she needs to find a way out of the situation. Death may turn out to be such a way out, but Radana doubts her choice. The girl asks herself whether she still wants to live. In Radana's life, there were many different difficulties, but every time she had a hard time, she looked at the sun and prayed to it. This gave her strength. At such critical moments of life, the protagonist dreamed of a quiet and joyful life in the lap of nature away from all people. Radana dreamed of lying on soft green grass and looking at the clear sky, washed by the rays of the warm sun. But now, disappointment tears the soul of the protagonist to pieces. The girl realized that her faith in the sun god was shaken. After Radana found herself in the abode of the Sun Prince, she realized that reality is not as the high priest Unicus Mundus told her. The protagonist does not want to turn out to be a hypocrite. The girl cannot give herself to the Sun Prince and spend the night with him. She must remain innocent in order to worship the sun god, pray to him, and receive new grace from him. So, it's decided. The protagonist doesn't want to live a lie. She has taken the final step to end all her problems once and for all. It's better to walk away and be herself than to live in fear of the unknown. The girl jumped from the balcony into the bottomless abyss of heaven, but Orazio Lumen saved her again. While still in his throne room, the Sun Prince sensed that Radana was in danger. He instantly moved to his chambers and caught the girl who was determined to die. The Sun Prince holds Radana in his arms. They float among the clouds and stars. Orazio Lumen told the girl that he could resurrect her if she wanted to end her life. He is not an easy man to walk away from. The divine young man brought Radana back to his chambers and sat her on the bed. Orazio Lumen said that resurrection will be a very painful process. The girl should always keep that in mind. Orazio Lumen smiled at Radana. He took one of the fruits from the table to offer it to the girl who hadn't eaten anything in days. She needed a refreshment today so she wouldn't do another stupid thing again. Sunny Prince treated the main character with a juicy fruit. The girl wants to take the fruit in her hands, but they are trembling. Radana thought that now she can't even die. She doesn't know what to do or how to go on. Finally, Radana got over the trembling in her hands. She took the fruit and thought that now she does not decide anything in her life. But how can you live like that if others decide everything for you? Orazio Lumen looked at his ward carefully. He asked why there was no maid beside his fiancée when she decided to jump off the balcony. That would have to be dealt with. The Sun Prince smiled enigmatically and waved his hand. He had once again resorted to magic powers to punish the inattentive maid who had lost sight of his fiancée. Orazio Lumen's eyes reflected what he had done to the negligent maid. With a single flick of his hand, the Sun Prince stripped the maid of her head. She didn't even have time to feel a thing. That's the way of the gods. They have no regard for the lives of their subordinates. For the gods, the blood of living beings is a kind of infinite source that fuels their greatness and their contempt for mortals. Orazio Lumen smiled again at his bride. He said that Radana must eat now. Otherwise, the water nymph Nico would meet the same fate as the maid who had just paid with her head for her stupidity and laziness. Radana listened to the Sun Prince and decided to eat to keep Nico alive. Orazio Lumen disappeared again. The protagonist was left alone in the chambers. But tonight, she will go to bed not with an empty stomach. From that day on, more servants began to follow the girl, and she never refused to eat again. The protagonist gradually began to get used to her new life in the heavenly castle of the Sunny Prince. Every morning, the water nymph Nico brought food to Radana. The girl would take the meal to keep her new friend safe. It was best not to mess around with Orazio Lumen. The divine food strengthened the main character's body. After a while, Radana finally recovered. Her former beauty and vigor returned to her. The girl's thoughts became clearer, and she again had a desire to live. Orazio Lumen often visited his ward unannounced. The water nymph Nico at such moments was frightened and quickly disappeared, turning into water. The protagonist tolerated the society of a divine young man who was distinguished by his beauty, but was very restrained in emotions. Radana constantly felt something evil that lurked in the Sunny Prince. Only in her dreams could the girl leave the heavenly palace of Orazio Lumen. The Sun Prince seemed to be satisfied with everything. The divine young man communicated with his future bride, holding back his emotions and not delving into her mental problems. Orazio Lumen had his own plans for the girl who could look him in the eye without repercussions. But there was something else. Orazio Lumen enjoyed his time with Radana. For 2 whole centuries, the Sun Prince hadn't been able to socialize with anyone like that. Because anyone who would look into the eyes of the divine young man would die in horrible agony. This is the Sun Prince's payment for his divine status. The protagonist is different from the other inhabitants of heaven. This beautiful girl can calmly look into the eyes of Orazio Lumen. Her soul is pure. Therefore, there are special abilities in her that allow her to be near the Sun Prince without fear for her safety. In addition, Orazio Lumen was very surprised when he realized that he could not read Radana's mind. That was what he enjoyed the most. Now, the Sun Prince could enjoy not only conversations with his fiancée, but also silence whenever he wanted it. There was only one problem in all of this. Radana didn't have enough stamina. Therefore, she should always keep her daily regimen and eat well. Otherwise, the girl might get sick again. Orazio Lumen put the protagonist in her bed. Radana doesn't want to sleep yet, but she has to obey the Sun Prince so that she doesn't contradict him. She doesn't want to anger the divine young man again. The protagonist covered herself with a blanket and closed her eyes. But sleep does not come to her. The girl thinks about why the Sunny Prince left her alive. She doesn't realize that he needs her. Radana thought of the divine young man. She marveled again at his beauty and strength. But something tells the girl that Orazio Lumen is to be feared. He harbors something evil, incomprehensible, and cruel. It was a sunny morning. The main character woke up in a good mood. The girl thought that she needed to diversify her leisure time. It is very difficult to do nothing all day, and in the evening go to bed, vainly trying to sleep. It's unhealthy and boring. The water nymph. Nico has already come to the protagonist to take care of her. The nymph said that the Sun Prince has gone hunting to have some fun. Radana can take a bath or have breakfast. Today, Nico will treat the girl to sweet figs. The choice is up to her. The protagonist says hello to the water nymph and decides to drink some of the divine drink to cheer herself up. The Sun Prince makes Radana sleep a lot to conserve her strength. The divine drink does a great job of counteracting the effects of sleepiness. Radana tells her new friend that she is not feeling well. She is bored and sad again. Maybe there are things to do to entertain herself. The water nymph Nico listened to her mistress. She found a tambourine and suggested Radana dance or sing a song. That should entertain the bored girl. The protagonist replied that these activities were not suitable for her. The girl needs to do some work. She agrees to do cleaning in the chambers of the Sunny Prince or wash fruit. Radana can't sit around doing nothing all the time. Otherwise, she will go crazy. The water nymph looked carefully at the Sun Prince's bride and said that members of the imperial family should not work. The protagonist replied that she was not a member of the imperial family. Nico replied to Radana that she is the fiancée of Orazio Lumen, therefore she can be considered a member of his family. The water nymph was a little embarrassed after those words because she thought she said something unnecessary. Radana's new friend is afraid that the Sun Prince will find out and punish her. You can get your head punished for rash words in Orazio Lumen's heavenly palace. Therefore, one must be very cautious in their expressions. Nico felt that the Sun Prince would be coming here soon. She turned into a large drop of water and quickly evaporated. The protagonist was already used to such antics on the part of the water nymph. But that doesn't make Radana any happier. Orazio Lumen stands on the balcony of his chambers. The Sun Prince wants to see his ward. The water nymph disappeared in time. Otherwise, she risked falling under the hot hand of the divine young man. The Sun Prince entered his chambers and said hello to his ward. Orazio Lumen wished Radana a good morning and showed that he was glad to see her in good health. His care for the girl is bearing excellent fruit. The protagonist looked carefully at the Sunny Prince and noticed that he was in a wonderful mood today. The girl politely said hello to her master and decided to smile at him because he likes it. But the girl's smile did not turn out to be sincere. Orazio Lumen noticed this and took a few steps towards the protagonist. The Sunny Prince wants to have a better look at his bride to know the whole truth about her. Be that as it may, Radana looks beautiful today. The divine young man asks the girl why she is so sad. Maybe she had something happened or someone dared to offend her. Radana answered Orazio Lumen that she was fine and nothing had happened to her. But the Sun Prince did not believe his bride. Orazio Lumen leaned over to the protagonist and smiled enigmatically. The Sun Prince said in a very serious tone that he hated liars. Therefore, Radana must be frank with him, no matter what was going on in her soul. Only in this way will the divine young man be able to help the girl. The protagonist looked at her master and realized that he was not joking. The girl realized that she could speak the truth to the Sun Prince because he is interested in her recovery and safety. This time, Radana will be frank with Orazio Lumen. The protagonist told the Sun Prince that she needs some work. Orazio Lumen didn't understand what the girl meant at first, but Radana added that she is very bored and might go crazy if this continues. So she asks the Sun Prince to think of some useful activity for her. Radana tells Orazio Lumen that she has very skillful hands. Since childhood, the girl has been accustomed to labor. She knows how to weave baskets and papyrus boxes, so she could do it at her leisure to pass the time in the celestial castle. Sunny Prince puts his hand on the forehead of the protagonist. Orazio Lumen wants to check if his fiancée is healthy. For the first time in his life, the divine young man sees a living creature who wants to trade laziness and tenderness for free labor. This is something amazing and extraordinary. Radana does not stop giving the Sunny Prince surprises. Orazio Lumen has made sure that his ward is perfectly healthy and has no fever. The Sun Prince leaned over to the protagonist and said that the basket weaving job amused him a lot. But Radana doesn't need it. She has another important task to fulfill. Orazio Lumen told his bride that it is her duty to stay in Heaven's castle and be alive and well. That is her job. The girl can ask for anything she wants except a job. Sunny Prince smiled enigmatically after saying those words and leaned even closer to the girl. The protagonist looks into the eyes of her master. The girl realizes that her requests are useless, but also Radana again noticed in the eyes of the Sunny Prince cruelty, madness, and indescribable sadness. The girl wants to understand Orazio Lumen, but she fails. Orazio Lumen pointed to the beautiful statue that is in his chambers. The Sunny Prince told the protagonist that she should always wait for him in the room like this magnificent statue and not move from her seat. Otherwise, the divine young man would be angry with the girl. The Sun Prince finished his speech and called out to the pet panther. The obedient animal approached the protagonist and her master. Orazio Lumen said that Radana should be as obedient as this panther, which fulfills all his orders. The bride of a divine young man should know her place and realize that she is very much like a pet panther. Radana should not look for meaning in life as this faithful and obedient animal. The girl needs to obey the Sun Prince, and then she will be perfectly fine. Orazio Lumen looked at his bride and pet panther carefully. The divine young man thought for a while and said that they both belonged to him. Therefore, Any insubordination or disobedience would be considered a betrayal. Radana should think about it. Some time passed. It rains in the heavens too. Large raindrops fall on the threshold of the Sun Prince's throne room. Orazio Lumen sits in his throne, silent and thinking hard about something. The divine young man is in a bad mood again. Orazio Lumen has many tasks to accomplish. The Sun Prince wants to get rid of the burden of his great responsibility in the role of a divine being and achieve absolute freedom. Besides, Orazio Lumen's thoughts are occupied with his fiancée, who interests him more and more every day. Has the cynical and cruel prince begun to become attached to Radana? Lumen's faithful servant Orazio is once again hiding behind a column in the throne room. Gino is disturbed by the pools of blood on the stone floor of the room, which are poorly washed away. Moreover, the Sun Prince's servant cannot understand why his master is in a bad mood. After all, he has obtained the obedience of his bride and left her with him, against all rules and laws. Suddenly, Gino notices the water nymph Nico gathering papyrus stalks that grow nearby. The servant of the Sun Prince was interested in this unusual circumstance. Nico has never done this before. The water nymph gathers papyrus for some obscure purpose. Gino decided to talk to the nymph to understand why she needed this useless herb. The servant of the Sun Prince turned to the water nymph and asked her how the mortal girl was doing. Nico didn't expect anyone to notice her for gathering papyrus. The nymph was a little confused, but immediately came to her senses and gathered her thoughts. Nico told Orazio Lumen's servant that he had startled her with his unexpected question. She added that the Lord's bride was feeling fine. Gino replied that a mortal girl cannot feel well in the heavenly palace. It is dangerous to her health. The water nymph heard Gino's remark and hesitated. Then the nymph said that she agreed with the Sun Prince's servant. Radana is not feeling at her best. There is nothing wrong with her health, though. Gino replied that he assumed so. He asked the water nymph what makes the Sun Prince's bride unhappy. After all, she is under the protection of Orazio Lumen, and no one can threaten her or spoil her mood. Nico wanted to tell and explain everything to the Sun Prince's faithful servant. But suddenly, Orazio Lumen appeared behind the water nymph. The divine young man asked Nico what she was doing here and why she left her mistress unattended. Orazio Lumen also noticed the armful of freshly plucked papyrus that the water nymph was holding in her hands. Nico had not expected this turn of events. The water nymph is very frightened by Orazio Lumen's appearance. She doesn't know what to say to him because she is confused. After a couple of seconds, the water nymph comes to her senses and says that the Sun Prince scared her very much. The nymph's heart almost jumped out of her chest. Orazio Lumen leaned over to Nico and tried to read her mind, but she was not thinking of Radana. This struck the prince as very strange. After a few seconds, Orazio Lumen realized what the point was here. He told the water nymph that she did not value her life at all and was acting very impudently. Nico asked her master what she had done wrong in front of him. The Sun Prince looked carefully at the frightened water nymph and said that she had used a special protective substance called rhinum. It makes it possible for Nico not to think of Radana, lest Orazio Lumen reveal her secret schemes. This is a very brazen and impertinent act on the part of an inferior nymph. You could pay for it with your life. Orazio Lumen said that rhinum cannot be used against him. It is a shield for the minds of living beings that is created from gold, sulfur, and powerful magic. One serving of rhinum is very expensive, so it should not be wasted. The water nymph knows that rhinum allows her to temporarily hide her thoughts from the Sun Prince, who can read the minds of other creatures. Isn't this a direct betrayal that is directed against Orazio Lumen? The Sun Prince finishes his speech. Nico and Gino stand in utter confusion and horror. They are very aware of how this could all end. The water nymph said that she had no choice. She took rhinum to help Radana. Orazio Lumen looks closely at the water nymph who betrayed him. The Sun Prince thinks about whether or not to kill her. Nymph Nico's life hangs in the balance.